From Wall Street to Ball Street, this former investment banker traded in his suit for a hoodie and has been making markets dance ever since. Give it up for Scott, Emeterio, and Ball Street Trading. A prophet once told this founder to head across the pond if he was to beat the odds of the bookmaker. He never looked back. Raise your hands for Dean, Sisun, and Prophet. Thank you, founders, for those introductions. Let's kick it over to our head referee, Nick.
All right, welcome everybody from around the world, from where you're watching this. This is the Sports Startup Digital Debate Competition, and we are in the Sweet 16 for the sports betting and gambling round. We have two amazing founders. We have Scott Emeterio, the founder of Ball Street Trading, and Dean Sisun, the founder at Bet Profit. So how this is going to work is we're going to have two debates. We're going to do heads or tails to decide who can receive the question first. So Scott, would you like heads or tails?
We'll take tails.
Tails. It is tails. Would you like to receive or defer?
I'll defer.
Defer. Cool. So Dean, you'll be the first one to respond. You're going to have 30 seconds to respond for the first question. And then after that 30 seconds, I'll come in. And then Scott, you'll have your shot to respond to that. Does that sound fair?
Cool. Let's do it.
Cool. Let's do this. So for the first question, we'll put 10 minutes on the clock. First question is, are you for or against that the current sportsbook model is what we know is over, or is there a new model that will come from this? So what would be your answer, Dean?
So I definitely don't think it's over. It's definitely here to stay. 30 seconds here, I'll stick to my main point of history predates that. In the United Kingdom, a little company called Betfair came along 20 years ago. Sportsbooks thought that was the end of them, and they spent a lot of money lobbying against them. They couldn't beat them, but however, Betfair struggled in a lot of areas, and it's why sportsbooks are alive and they still dominate the UK today.
Scott, would you agree or disagree with that?
I think on some level there's certainly always going to be a need for the European or Nevada style sports book where someone walks up to window, but I think as we look to evolve through technology and the accessibility for new innovation to come out, therefore pulling away the need to have something like a negative 110 or a 10% spread or vig put on a lot of these sort of issues that we have with people putting bets on, is a really easy way for that to pull apart and begin to create different ways for people to interact with sports and experience sports betting in new and innovative ways. I think technology wasn't there, and if you use the Betfair example, Betfair is still a very dry platform. It's likely more reason that it didn't catch on from a user engagement perspective or from a UI perspective than anything else.
Dean, anything to counter to that?
Yeah, I think it completely caught the user's attention. It's the best straight product, betting product in the world. It's in 90 countries. It encompasses, straight bet-wise, more than 25% of the market there. I think you're absolutely right in minus 110. That model is not here to stay. The advantage for consumers is better pricing, and you get that with a peer-to-peer model with an exchange like a Betfair. But you look at Betfair, and there's a reason why there are still sportsbooks out there, and it's because even with all the liquidity in the world out there, you can't bet on LeBron James to have over 1.5 steals at the price you want to on a Betfair because there's just not enough liquidity out there for it. And they're in 90 different countries and they use one liquidity pool and one bet matching engine. So even in the US, you can't match that type of volume globally that they have. So again, I don't see a way that sportsbooks are leaving. I really don't, especially when you factor in parlays, especially when you factor in teasers. You're factoring in alternative lines where you want to buy points. Those markets are just not liquid enough across the board. And again, it's why you're going to have sportsbooks alongside of your differentiated models, alongside of your secondary marketplaces, what we are looking to come in as, your peer-to-peer models, your other financially driven, target market focused platforms. So again, my overall answer is I don't see a way you can get rid of them, especially my last point here with the lead that they have right now, with all the money they have that they're sitting on.
certainly no one's going to defend the position that the incumbents have in this industry. I think what the reality of this innovation will ultimately bring will be new players into this space. I think when we consider the U.S. specifically, with all of the challenges from a regulatory standpoint with the Wire Act currently in place, when we focus on the brick and mortar style of sports books, can they outrun the issues that are now going to come from a post-PASPA, where everyone's now trying to create mobile first, where there are certain states and certainly companies that are going to be dragged into the muck because they can't keep up with only having brick and mortar business models up and running. I think those are going to be the cracks that you're ultimately going to see, where you have outside players. I know there seems to be this cavalry of startups, us certainly included in that conversation, that want to try to get in there and create what the new world's ultimately going to look like. But certainly when we think about, to your point, this peer-to-peer exchange model, who's to say that retail brokers don't ultimately get into this stake, or those big technology companies that now are looking to start buying rights, like Amazon just picked up streaming for a couple more years before all the big rights begin to come out on the NFL, to where you have new players in the game, where you potentially have the Wire Act come down, and you now have the ability for some sort of federal framework to then go forward from a mobile perspective. And the reality of these incumbents are so entrenched in this brick and mortar style of the conventional window sportsbook. That's where I think you begin to bleed and have this change come. And this is still going to take a lot of time for this all to evolve out. I think we can certainly agree that this isn't a couple of years. This is probably 5 or 10 years out.
Absolutely. I think it's going to take time. And I think, in this question, the current sportsbook, I think there's two ways to look at that. One, what you're talking about is brick and mortar. And yes, that's definitely not the future, right? Obviously, we're all going online, we're all going mobile. You'll still have your retail sportsbooks, because there is, a fun factor of entering a luxury sportsbook and losing all your money in a weekend and partying all weekend at Vegas. We still love that as human beings, but you see the MGMs of the world, they're moving online. They have 2% market share in New Jersey. They're getting
if they're able to get access to those online markets. And I think the reality of the market is still very much hanging on to brick and mortar, whether they want to or whether the regulators are forcing them to.
Well, you still need brick and mortar, because in order to get into a state, you need a partner with said brick and mortar casino. And what they do is they take care of a lot of the problems on the server side, state by state, and then they also take care of the overall license. So you still need them, so they'll still be around. That being said,
let me jump in real quick. This could go to our next question and maybe narrow the focus a little more. So what's the sole focus that needs to change about the current sportsbook model to either draw more casual bettors or become more mainstream? So kind of, you guys are talking about the traditional sportsbook. What's the number one thing that needs to change that you guys are referring to?
I think there's a number of things that ultimately need to change, and I think certainly the experience of which fans are ultimately engaging with that experience of watching sports needs to be really focused and looked at it through a lens using today's technology. If you look back to where sports started, or sports betting started 50 to even 100 years ago, they had very limited tools to create the process of which we still use today in Nevada and in Europe. So our ability to now focus on specific tastes and preferences is, I think, going to be the biggest thing to pull those fans of sports who now want to engage and experience sports with little action on it. And certainly probably even more so, more importantly, try to find those offshore players and bring them back into the ecosystem, because I think that has been one of the biggest hurdles that the current sportsbook is facing, with trying to pull all of those offshore bettors, at least in the United States, onto an onshore platform. I know every one of my friends who still bets in New Jersey still uses their bookie offshore.
Right, and the reason they do that is because either one, it's a tax question.
Very much so.
They don't have to pay taxes on their winnings. And that generally comes from the more experienced bettors, not the casual bettors. In reality, this is a sharks and minnows world. You don't have a lot of sharks out there, and you have a ton of minnows. And it's exactly why sportsbooks are making a killing. Because what they do with the sharks is they kick them off their book. If they're providing negative value to them, why is a sportsbook, would I have this extremely smart bettor who's just kicking my ass every weekend on my platform? I'm not. I'm going to kick him off. So if you want to bring in more casual bettors as a sportsbook model, I mean, this may sound like a silly answer, but I don't think they have to do much. They just have to keep doing what they're doing. And I see it over in the UK with what we're doing right now. So sportsbooks are dominating the casual bettor market, because those guys, let's be real here, not a lot of people know what they're doing in sports betting, and those are the guys who are going to flock to the sportsbook. It's too easy for them to grasp. It's the easiest layout. It hits them right in the face with what they want to do. Sportsbooks are designed like that on their user interface for them to hit users immediately with what they want to bet on. People want to be told what to bet on a lot of the time. So if you want to bring in more bettors and you want to differentiate your product, I think an easier place to start is with the higher level guys, not the casual guys. You bring those guys in and then you let it funnel down to the casual guys.
I think this conversation, if we're talking about sports books and operators, I think the reality in this post-basketball world, in the US at least, is that there's so much money to be made outside of the sports book that if you're an operator, the focus of your business probably needs to be outside of the sports book, and figure out how you can monetize that engagement and that fan experience outside of literally taking a bet from these quote-unquote casual fans. And when an operator speaks about casual fans, you're talking about the guy who doesn't care that he's paying negative 120 on a ball or strike, who eventually will figure out that's probably not the best experience for him to watch that game in the long run.
Right, but as a platform, you're not going to be able to have that market on a peer-to-peer exchange, going back to what we're talking about before, because you're just not going to have liquidity that quickly and on that niche of a market. It's a reality. It's the reason why Betfair doesn't offer those bets, because they're just losing money on those. It's just clutter. And it's the reason why a sportsbook can have that. It's the reason why you can have point-by-point betting on Bet365 when I'm sitting at the Davis Cup. It's the reason why you can bet on balls and strikes, because the sportsbook, they are the house. They can take it if they want. And like you said, they put minus 120 on there to juice it up, to create more vig, because in reality, they have no idea what the next pitch is going to be, so they're just playing the odds game. They're just
Which is another reason I think that these operators are ultimately going to have a harder time with new technology and new players coming in, because central risk management is almost an impossible task when you're asking them to put odds on balls and strikes. I think the Betfair model is certainly one to look at, but this is us now making the assumption that that's the best way to create this type of exchange model. I don't agree that what Betfair had put together 10 or 15 years ago is what ultimately is going to create a sports betting exchange, certainly in the US or even global. And we think about all the new ways that technologies can come in and create different experiences and be more inclusive to those players who want to experience a more retail trading experience. If you look at what's happening in the United States, even after this past quarter, you have TD Ameritrade, who brought in over 600,000 new users. You have E-Trade, who brought in 300,000 new users this quarter. We know DraftKings, from their filing with the IPO, has 689,000 users monthly. That is across their DFS, that is across their online gambling, that is across their sportsbook. So when we talk about the ability to speak to that market where people are already engaging in markets, that is something that is understood. And it's a question of getting them into a sporting context to appreciate the market and appreciate the efficiency that Betfair does bring to the sports betting landscape.
What about Betfair's user interface and experience do you think won't be successful in the US?
Decimals, and it's very dry when you're looking at that interface. I think people look at it, well, even if it said negative 110, I would still say that the convention that they're using is not sustainable in the long run. I think if you walk down Main Street, no one knows what negative 110 means. No one knows what your money's going to win on plus 135. I think the first shift, if someone gave me keys to a sports book tomorrow, would be to begin the evolution into a percentage model to where you understand 60% to win is much easier to fully digest as a new and, like you say, casual user.
I completely disagree there. I think American odds and decimals are the easiest way to go about it. It's why sportsbooks use that. It's the reason they don't use percentages. If you want to go after percentages, go after the financially driven guys all you want. You're not going to make a market that way. But if you want to go after the casual guys, you're going to need minus 110. It's $110 to net 100. If you're looking at a decimal, and you can take care of that with a couple of onboarding slides on your app, 1, 2, 3, when you sign up. It's very easy to grasp.
Well, how many people of the million people who just signed up for retail sites across 2 providers are casual? You're saying none of those are casual fans? 1 million people in 3 months across E-Trade and TD Ameritrade?
That's not what I said. You're talking about odds and how we should look at them. If you're looking at a percentage market, how do I know how much money I'm going to make no matter what happens? It's a lot easier, and it's ingrained in our culture to look at odds. And you look at every other country in the world.
I think when you go to school and you grow up learning arithmetic, you're learning percentages. And I know if I buy something at 55 percentage or dollars and then sell it at 65 percentage or dollars, there's $10 to be made. You want to call it a percentage or you want to call it a unit, whatever you want to define it as, that is much simpler and easier to digest to the quote unquote casual fan in my
look, that's your opinion. You can test that data all you want and you're going to see that you're wrong. And there's a reason why sportsbooks are out there with the odds that they have right now. But I guess we agree to disagree there.
Time will certainly tell for sure.
Yep. Great. So that was all the time we have, but we do have time for one overtime question. So we're talking about sharks and minnows. We have big fish or small fish. What do you think, an early stage startup with not a lot of capital, what do they need to do to take a market share or build their own niche and build around this existing infrastructure? What would you say a smaller company needs to do now to carve out a niche in a very competitive landscape?
I think Scott and I will agree on this question, that we're not going to be able, or this point rather, that we're not going to be able to put our names on stadiums and jerseys like I keep referring to the UK, but it's what they're doing in the UK, and we are going to follow that model. We're not going to be able to afford the radio ads that DraftKings and Fanduel are putting their dollars towards. So what we're doing right now, and the most effective way that we've seen after we've measured our cost to acquire these guys, is you hit the affiliates who have followings of casual guys. So for example, in America, you have the talking heads like Rufus Peabody, you have Captain Jack, you have these guys who are getting shut out from PointsBet, from DraftKings, from FanDuel. They are always complaining about it. And the way that we plan to target our market and get guys on in a cheap way is we get the Rufuses and the Captain Jacks of the world. They come on, they use our platform. It's obvious benefit for them. They get better prices. They don't have any limits. And then we incentivize them for every customer that they refer. So if that's a $20, $30 charge, it's negotiable and it's different for everyone, but it's not the $1,000 that you're paying to get a customer in today's world. There's three ways that you compete in sportsbooks today. You compete on product, you compete on pricing, or you can compete on marketing. FanDuel and DraftKings, they have the product. Pricing, honestly, no one has right now. And marketing, right now, I've seen Bet America with $1,000 as your first bet. So, long-winded answer there, but I think it's with the affiliates. And that's how you lower your cost to acquire, and then that's how you ultimately compete with them.
Yeah, I would agree is that the reality is you don't try to compete with them. You're not going to be able to play their game, or at least play it well enough to be successful at it. We are not running a sports book. Our focus is right now on free to play, and our attack is really to leverage the long-term engagement that we're able to see intra-game to be able to turn around and bring brand sponsors in and allow them to leverage that engagement and create the ability to message, communicate, and then collect information to create a unique experience that brand can ultimately be a part of that specific event. For us, it's a model that those partners, through those partnerships, ultimately will pay us to acquire users through the ability to take that digital spend, use some of it as the prize pool and incentive for those players to come on and enjoy the experience. And then the other part of that is certainly we're able to take on and put against the ideal growth that we'd able to see from being able to leverage not only the event, the experience, but the partner and their ability to influence and use their reach to do it.
Great. Well, there's been a phenomenal debate, gentlemen. And for all those listening, use the hashtag #DebateForCovid. Let us know who you think won this one. Other than that, great debate, and looking forward to see you all at the next round.
And let's introduce our judges. First up, Steve Ahern, principal at KB Partners. And next, Julian Fialkow, senior investment associate at Drive by DraftKings. And lastly, James Santore, chief of staff at 76 Capital. Let's kick it over to our head referee, Nick.
All right, that was an amazing debate that we had with Scott and Dean for the sports betting and gambling Sweet 16 round. So now we're going to the judges for analysis and their picks. We're going to start with you, Steve. Who did you pick, and what is your analysis?
Well, things got a little bit of contentious there, and I thought they both had a lot of great points, but I ended up going with Dean here. I think I agree with his early point that the current sports book model is here to stay in some way. I think that there's opportunities for people coming on and early stage startups to carve out some market share from the existing sports books, but I still think that they need to be there to address some of the liquidity issues that he had brought up. I also think kind of the where he won for me was kind of his last point on how casual sports or casual startups can carve out a piece of the market by going after unique distribution channels, going after the affiliate model. And I think, in this market where you're paying a lot for each user, the more you can do to create that unique distribution cycle and reduce CAC upfront is how you're going to win early on.
I really appreciate that insight there. And Julian, if you could give your analysis on this round.
Yeah, kind of following up Steve, I thought it was a great debate. Both guys had clearly come prepared for it. I ended up choosing Scott over Dean. I thought they both had, really good, background ideas and where they thought the markets were going. I thought Scott did a really good job kind of talking about the new age of sports betting, kind of moving towards the DraftKings and Fanduels of the world, having more product offerings and user interface as well. And Dean actually said a point that you need to partner with that said betting operator on the ground, but Tennessee just launched online wagering only. You don't need to partner with an operator to be live in the state. So I think some of the states will kind of see the resources there and see the opportunity what Tennessee is doing, and maybe other states will kind of follow in the same footsteps, kind of going against a lot of Dean's points. So that's kind of why I came to my conclusion. I thought they both did a great job, and I'm excited to see the outcome.
Amazing. So now we're in an interesting situation. We have one vote for Scott, one vote for Dean, and now James will have the icebreaker on this one. So James, I know you're in a tough spot, but if you could give your analysis and then at the end of your analysis, give your pick, that would be much appreciated.
Absolutely. And, I kind of echo what Steve and Julian said about it being a great conversation, a really good debate. I think both sides made a lot of really good points. And, I think when you hear what they were saying, it makes you really excited about the future of sports betting. I think that's what I got out of all of this. And I think both guys are awesome. So looking forward to working with both of them in the future. As far as my decision here, it really did come down to the last question. I was like kind of half and half on second question, and Dean won it for me when he talked about the three different things that the startups need to do to be successful, and that's the product, the pricing, the marketing. I really like the way that he outlined that of how they can be successful, and I think the way he talked about the product of DraftKings and FanDuel, they have the product, and look, they're going to be around forever. I liked that he made that clear, and it made it obvious. The pricing, I thought that was really interesting to talk about how Bet America is throwing $1,000 out there right now. And sorry, my phone is going off. And then for the marketing side, I think I really do believe what he said about the affiliate side of things. I think that's a really exciting opportunity for some of these startups to get a little bit cheaper of a user acquisition cost and a way to kind of really make a difference quicker. So I just thought Dean overall had a little bit more concise of an answer, and Scott was great as well, but Dean pulled it off at the end.
Great. Well, I appreciate that insight there. And that was a very good battle between both of the founders. Very close decision, and I appreciate all the insight. So congratulations, Dean. You're on your way to the Elite Eight. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and thank you for that valuable insight to all the judges here.